build the plant seeds, your wisdom, all real, no fillers. From the salt of the earth, we birth something new, the organic, RAW.
So what's up with the seed conference and showing it off every time a video is uploaded this month or whatever? I mean, this guy Derek, he's not even in it, you know? Like, true that, but I got a whole boatload of friends and mentors, in a sense, that are presenting. Like, there's only one person in there that I don't really know, or even like been in contact with, or have, some of their material. But yeah, among us Great Work Warriors, where we meet up once a week to kind of, we're sharing ideas, troubleshooting technology and software and things that we're trying to incorporate and get better at in regards to creating content and, producing whatever we can through mediums of expression that are gonna help help the betterment of others, because we're all on the same wavelength as far as being aligned to natural law as much as we can, and spreading those messages and trying to get folks on board with that. And it ain't no fucking cult, religion, whatever the fuck. It's just, getting in tune with the codes of consciousness, and finding ways to be an example of that, and make videos, maybe write books, whatever. So, yeah. Chris is going to be presenting a really interesting presentation. I'm not going to say anything about it, because it's coming up in just a couple days anyways. And Brandon Spencer's is putting a wonderful presentation together for this event as well. And voila, let's get to the nuts and bolts of this next Great Work Warriors chat, the Socratic method. And this is really interesting and ties into what I spoke about in one of my recent videos regarding words and swords, and how we can master the art of conversation and even debate, and just ways to make people question what they think, and some of the false axioms of lies that they're operating on or from. It's hard to make people change their minds or look into convince them otherwise as to how could, if they're so convinced that what they think they know is true, right? So the Socratic method is quite an interesting avenue to travel through or dabble through, and just add that into your vocabulary avenue. Anyways, it's not like I've had a few. Just love playing with words. Perfect timing. All right, enjoy.
Hello, this is Chris Jansen. I'm here with my friends, the One Great Work Warriors. We're back for another exciting episode, stimulating conversation, thoughts, philosophy about morality, truth, natural law, the topics that we love to discuss, and we're hoping to educate and share excitement with other folks that like to tune into this type of thing. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for coming. Today, we're continuing a conversation from a couple weeks ago. And that conversation is, we were talking about something called the devil's advocate. And we were talking about going back and forth in our own mind and with people that we have discussions with, and being able to discuss both sides of a given topic, and to work our way through one of these difficult conversations we've had with all of our friends and family, and even conversations we've dealt with in our own self, in our own psyche, trying to figure out these things. And we're trying to encourage you, the listener, to join us in the stimulating thought process, and to ask yourself the difficult questions you might not have asked before, and to give you ideas of how to talk to your friends and family about these concepts of natural law, of freedom, morality, objective morality. What do these words mean? How come they're not brought up more in school? Yeah. And we're going to be discussing all these things in upcoming conference. freedomundernaturallaw.com is the place to learn about the Trivium conference, which is coming up January 24th and 25th. And some of the gentlemen here are going to be involved in the planning of that. And we have Brandon here, who was an awesome speaker and presenter in Funnel 2. And this week, we're going to talk about the Socratic method. So before we start bouncing around our roundtable of wisdom here, I'm going to hand it off to Brandon to give us a little bit of introduction into what are we talking about with the Socratic method.
Thank you, Chris. As always, you do some of the best intros, and thank you, Jerry, Jim, Derek, for joining us. I know Rick couldn't be here, but he's here. He's just not, you just can't see him. But yeah, the Socratic method. First off, let's get into where the name Socratic comes from. It comes from how one of my favorite philosophers, Socrates. He was one of the most brilliant minds to possibly ever walk this planet. And he used to ask a lot of questions, and that was the whole point of the Socratic method, was dialogue, conversation. You would have the teacher and the student walking around Greece, walking around Athens. I hope those are the correct places where Socrates was at. But you would have Socrates and Plato, or Plato and Aristotle, and just walk around and start off asking questions. Because once you ask a question, then that creates dialogue, that creates ideas, that creates conversation. So you would have the teacher who would ask the student a question, and it was the student's job to think about it and try to respond, and then the teacher would respond to, is to get you to understand things from an objective standpoint. That's really what the Socratic method was supposed to be about, and not just trying to interpret things or trying to rely on opinions from just a subjective mindset. It was really to express and to get someone to understand an objective meaning, objective truth, and that was the whole point of this conversation, the whole point of these ideas. And the Socratic method has actually been you can boil down into like 5 steps, per se. You got receive, reflect, refine, restate, and repeat. And the whole point of that is because if you were using this, then you could point out someone's bias, you can point out someone's cognitive dissonance, you can point out someone's inconsistency. So by starting off with the original question, that you have this answer, as you go into more dialogue, you are pretty much refining and filtering out. And then what you are left with, then you can take what is pretty much, left over, then compare that to the original answer to see if this person is in contradictory, or to see if this person is in consistency. So that's one of the powers of the Socratic method. And I'm going to pass it on to Jim.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, guys. Yeah, the Socratic method. I only just learned about it about a year ago and became very fascinated, about it, and how the whole cognitive dissonance thing, and how it's a great way of showing people what's really going on, and it gets them to reflect on the truth. I want to acknowledge Rick, because Rick couldn't be with us tonight, and he had hit the streets about a year ago, and his questions, his Socratic method questions, he would ask people, what is a right, and where does a right come from? And if he was here, he'd be able to tell you how confounded he was, what people just couldn't give him a good answer on it. And we had already spoken about this in one of our very first videos. So if people want to go check that out, you'll get a good summary of we covered that pretty extensively. So that was cool. I got a few questions that I've been asking people, and it kind of it gets people in that cognitive dissonance. And the one I like to ask is, would you ever contribute to an organization that causes harm to people? And automatically people are going to say, no, I would never do that. I don't want to do that. And then you slowly take them through the process. And then when you get to taxes and supporting the government and the military, it's like, well, what's really going on, you know? A few other questions I asked, like, would it be okay with you if someone came to your home and said, this is no longer yours? Like, it's mine now. You can stay here, but um, you no longer own it, and how would you feel about that? Would you have the right to defend yourself? And of course, everyone says, yeah, no one can do that. They're like, but that's what's been going on, like with the American Indians and in Hawaii, for example. Um, I asked people, do you think Jesus would vote? Well, would you be okay if your grandma was president? I remember asking this one girl, and I had just met her grandmother the day before, and it's just a sweet old lady. And it was like, would you think it would be cool if your grandma became the president? She thought about it, like, because it sounds like a great, highly esteemed position and like something like a goal to aspire to. But it's like, wait, but then your grandmother's going to be like the leader of like a military that kills innocent people. Are you really okay with that? So, and then, that puts people in that cognitive dissonance these kind of questions, like, gets people to think about, the morality and what's really happening. And like, even though we've been programmed to be patriotic in that, it's like, well, these people are really causing harm and we're contributing to it. And so these are good ways to show that we are like, and we don't think we are, but we are. And is that okay? And then really one of the next great questions is, would a good person contribute to an organization that causes harm to innocent people, that kills innocent people? And it's like, are you a good person? Or would a bad person do that? So, and then I think we all know too that this is a very confronting situation to put people in, and they but it's not like you're yelling at them telling this. It gets them to think. And we know it takes time to process these things. So we're just kind of trying to plant seeds by asking these questions. So it's a great way just to do that. I call it like to see the truth in their heart, because I do know in most people's hearts they can admit they don't want to cop to it, but if they can search and sit with themselves and answer these questions, like, and did they come to the conclusion that a good person would do that? I don't think so. So I'll pass it to Derek, and yeah, that's what I got.
Awesome, Jim. Thanks.
Yeah. Did you say the word conclusion, by the way?
I think so.
Yeah. So I
Is
mean,
that a
like,
wrong term?
that's a simple question anyone can ask when, all of a sudden, you're talking about something with someone else and you know, maybe throw in a curveball or whatever you want to call it of, some kind of dialectic or narrative that they bring up that we kind of know has some falsehoods about it, you know. And there's certain ways we can ask them. It's not like, ow, because that's us kind of projecting and getting triggered by that kind of stuff. If we like suspend our fucking bullshit and what we know and all that stuff and don't invest a whole lot of time, like, oh, there's going to be expectations if I have this conversation and whatever. And half of them aren't even calm or patient. But anyways, so you just ask them like, hey, like, that's interesting. I heard the same thing. I'm kind of curious though, how did you come to that conclusion? That kind of stuff. And it's not such an intrusion on their type of thing. It's like, and we talked about this with Chris earlier this morning, of just like really trying to stimulate thought and have this be inviting and maybe a little enticing to them. It's not about us. We know what's up. And it's not like we know it all and all that stuff. We can learn a shitload from anyone we engage with about all types of stuff around life, But obviously the context is more along the lines of what we were talking about last week, or a week 2 weeks ago, in regards to like having a free sovereign society, broken away from the oppressive governmental type of stuff. And there's people that are going to be frothing at the mouth at us just for bringing that up, or like saying government is slavery, or taxation is theft and all this stuff. So yeah, folks get triggered pretty easily because they hear a lot of things from the mainstream media and whatever, kind of all types of shit, right? And we could even ask them like, hey, like, just be in your true core essence of, like, understanding the truth of the matter and like staying fucking firm to that, centered with the between the two pillars of enlightenment, masculine, feminine, non-aggressive, non-violent communication is included in that, as far as like the self-defense principle, because they're going to start talking shit and throwing ad hominem attacks on some logical fallacy shit that we talk about in the trivium. Then hey, we got to call that shit out for what the fuck it is. And that's why we learn these things sometimes. And it's not about knowing more than the next person. It's like getting people leveled the fuck up to understanding certain things. And we could even ask them like, hey, like, I understand, like, I notice you have like a knee-jerk reaction to that. Like, what's up with that? Like, cool, calm, and composed. As soon as we start knee-jerk reaction to their knee-jerkiness, like, where the fuck, I'm sure y'all have been there before and done that, and so have I, and it just doesn't go all that well most of the time, So that slippery slope. As far as questions, you can ask them just things like, so how have, whoever you voted for, and the politicians you support, how has that like truly improved your life, like on a personal level, and this and that? And some of the things that they could bring up could make us think and be like, well, is that arbitrary or not? And like, it doesn't matter, like, and you could just go to other questions, like continue with that and just like stimulate their curiosity of like, okay, this guy's curious as to what I think and my perspective. A lot of times, like, people close up if we feel like, we're just talking down upon them or whatever, and not, we're trying to get our points across so brazenly sometimes that, y'all have been there. That exchange is not that easy at that point. But you can ask them, because we understand, at least I hope folks do, that the mainstream media has been talking a lot of shit about us in ways that we come across certain perspectives. They want to lump all that shit up into some right-wing nut job, QAnon, Trumpalina bullshit, whatever the fuck, right? Anything that we say of that crosses any conspiratorial line, whether it's fucking true or not, you understand, like, they're playing that shit against us, and just laughing it up on Saturday Night Live with their shitty fucking jokes these days, and blah fucking blah. But we can ask them like, okay, well, I'm kind of curious, like, how did you learn, or did you learn, like, or what did you hear about what you're hearing from me? Like, what have you heard about natural law? What have you heard about, like, true anarchy, and like a hermetic? Have you heard about the Hermetica? Like Kabbalion and things like that, and things that are really empowering, things that are more empowering than ever watched on fucking television. Like, so giving them little like things to be inspired by or question more on, and like have some kind of that seed of whatever that makes them go, hey, what's going on? Maybe I'll let this seed germinate and see what's going on with that, exactly, type of thing. Word up to the seed conference. That's later on in the near. Brandon's going to be on that, but I'll come back to my questions. But I think I rambled on for enough. Jerry, what's cracking, man? ¿Cómo estás?
I'd love to hear you speak, Derek. I'm good. How are you?
All right, cheers, man.
Well, since you passed the torch, I'll just say that I heard some of what you said. I'm at an Airbnb, so I wanted to have the lights on, so you know my screen wouldn't be dark. But from what I did hear was true. So definitely want to be calm. You don't want to be like panicking because that doesn't help anyone. So the thing that came to mind was the ethics, like something ethical. Um, like let's say you have a meter from 0 to 100. What would range in the 100 would be something that benefits you and myself. So it's a win-win. And then even thinking of a win-win-win situation, that's what like I'm striving for. So as far as questions go, I basically thought of questions to ask based to who I would ask. These questions are directed to someone who questions objective morality, let's say. So my first question was, what is the truth? And that would already trigger an answer in their mind. And in my mind, I'm thinking they'll say, oh, the truth is what anyone says it is. So if that's the case, if someone says that truth doesn't exist, but then someone else says that truth does exist, it's illogical. It's a fact. Like they don't match. So essentially, I would help them realize that by saying what I just said. So for there to be a truth, it has to be objective. So once they realize that, then my second question would be, is morality objective or subjective? Or actually, is there a truth to morality, whether it's objective or subjective? So if we know there's a truth, then there's got to be a truth about morality. That's where my head is at. So I let them think about that. So they'll say, huh, you know what? I think it's objective. But there was something that I heard yesterday. I think it's called the coyote. It's coyote learning, where you don't want to tell someone, like you don't want to. It's essentially teaching someone without them knowing you're teaching them. So instead of telling them, for example, well, this guy, he worked on ships, right? So he was out at sea. And when he was teaching someone with this method, he wouldn't tell them, oh, we need to switch directions 20 degrees, or I don't even know. An example, like we need to raise the flag because such and such, just an example. But he would ask them questions like, if so and so is coming that direction, what do you think we should do? And he would get the others answering the questions to essentially answer with the correct answer without him having to tell them so, because that's they would have to think and use their brain and use their neurons essentially. Um, yeah, all the electricity going on. But yeah, that's the coyote method. So that's like what I would try to do with someone who questions objective morality. And then, so if we already define like the truth, there's a truth. If not, if truth was subjective, then there isn't a truth. And then the second question, well, is there's got to be a truth to morality, whether it's objective or subjective. And once we like know it's objective, then Yeah, my third question. Um, I guess I would just ask something like, "Hey, do you think?" Yeah, I guess my second question was going to be my third, but it didn't make sense to put it as a third, so I put it as a second. So I guess those two questions really are my leverage to having someone think. So that's I'll leave it there.
Cool. Thanks, Jerry. And the kind of the way you went through it, Jerry, is something I've done with quite a few people, asking them very similar types of questions than you just described. And I was telling these guys before I got on today, I was thinking about what questions I wanted to talk about with you guys. And I'm like, I need like some frustrating person that's going to give me the answers I don't like, you know? And so I went on this chat. It's not Chat GPT, but it's something similar. It's a AI on my phone, and I was asking it a series of questions. And some of the ones Jerry described it were part of the path. I was trying to ask, how can morality ever be subjective? You know, and how can I asked it, what does subjective mean? I think a lot of people, and that is important, by the way, a lot of people are confused about the terms subjective and objective. And so we toss them around a lot, but I think it is important with people to ask questions about making sure that we're using the same word. And something I've realized over and over recently is trying to talk about anarchy is a tough term. Inevitably, people think that anarchy means chaos and disorderliness or not following any rules, when in fact, that's not what it means. And I even went through that discussion here with the AI, and it seemed to be confused about what the answer was about that because it gave me two different answers. And so, like Brandon's saying, when we start getting two different answers, that's when we're kind of like, whoa, I'm confused, And I like Derek's approach towards people, like, uh, you know, I can come across a lot more humble if I say, hey, here's something I'm confused about. Maybe you can explain it to me. How does that work? Because that doesn't make sense to me. You know, Tell me, explain to me. And people love to tell you everything that they know. So anyway, I was asking this AI. So I asked him, so there's no such thing as objective morality, because the answer it gave me said that morality is often shaped by various factors, such as religion, culture, upbringing, and personal experiences. Therefore, what one person considers to be moral or ethical may not be the same as what another person considers. That's what it's telling me. And so I said, so you're saying there's no such thing as objective morality? And it says, well, there's also positions in between these two extremes, and such as that the idea that there are objective moral principles, but their interpretation and application depend on cultural and individual contexts. So even there, the AI is starting to back off and say, oh, well, yeah, I guess there could be objective morality, but, it's just how we interpret the objective, right? And here's another question I asked. If morality was subjective, one person could justify just about any immoral action, right? And the AI said, it does not mean that there are no moral rules at all. Most people believe that some actions are inherently wrong. For example, murder, rape, and theft are generally considered immoral, and there's usually punishments. And I said, but then why do so many laws allow for killing and kidnapping and stealing, such as militaries attacking another country or police detaining people for crimes where no property or human was damaged, or taxing people who are not old enough to vote, or taxes at all, for as far as that goes, which is organized stealing? Laws are not moral. And this is when I kind of got him. The AI had to admit that laws are not necessarily moral, and often laws are immoral. So that really brought together what I think is a pretty solid question to ask people. Are laws moral? Are laws moral? And people have to admit, when you give them enough examples, that, well, laws are not necessarily moral at all, right? And then I went on for a lot of this conversation comparing anarchists all in history to governments. And I was asking, this AI to just give me a guess on how many people have been killed by actions of governments historically. And it came up with tens of millions. And I go, okay, historically in all of time, how many killings or murders can we come up with from the hands of anarchists? It came up with like a couple, maybe examples. And I said, so we have a couple, 2 or 3 deaths here from anarchists and tens of millions of deaths over here from government. Which one's a lot more dangerous? Anarchist philosophy or the government philosophy? So that's where I'll end for now. But we could do some more fun if we got time here and play with this AI's responses to some of our questions. And I got a lot more, but I'm going to pass it on to Brandon.
Yeah, I want to get back into the 5 steps of the Socratic method that I've come across before I get to my question, because one thing about the Socratic method that people may not be as familiar with is it is the trivium method. That's really all that it is. So earlier I said you have pretty much these 5 steps, from my research, and the first step would be is to receive. Like, you have to hear what this person is going to say. So when you ask them, have this question, they are going to give you their input, which would be the first step of the trivium. So you hear that, and then how the second step would be is how you reflect it. You sum up that same answer. So there is no distinction in clarity. One of the problems is when you're talking with people is the loss of clarity. So you repeat what they say to make sure that there is no miscommunication, to make sure that, okay, this is what you were saying. This is, what you are clear on. This is your definition. Okay, this is the context. Okay, so you are starting to filter stuff out. We are starting to refine, which refine is the third step. That's when you bring your evidence, you bring your facts, because again, we are getting to the second step of the trivium, which is processing, because we are trying to get a better understanding of what this person is thinking, of what this person is feeling, what this person believes, what this person's thought processes are, and what this person's world views are. So we are slowly refining this, which will lead to the fourth step. After you refine this stuff, then you are going to restate, because as you are having this dialogue and you are refining this stuff, you are constantly going to be restating this person's answer, because this person's answer is going to change, or how this person could start to have that light bulb moment. You never know. And then too, you could also start to plant seeds. So as you are refining this stuff, that is that filtration, even more. Then you have that how you restate it. So you're getting to that last part of the trivium is you repeat the final process, and then you can go back to the receiving, and that's the whole trivium: input, processing, output. That's going to go on infinitum. That's the whole point of this the whole point of this conversation, to engage, to spark new ideas. So before I get into my question, one thing about the Socratic method is you don't always have to ask your question in a katathetic, view. You can ask your question in an apathetic sense, meaning you can ask your question in a negative. So if you're not familiar with what the apathetic inquiry is, it is a process of confirmation by negating stuff out. So you're describing what something is by knowing what it is not. So that's one of the best ways to really tap into someone's emotional heartstrings, because that's one of the beauties and the tools when you have this knowledge and you understand the power and you understand this power of this knowledge, is you have to start where people are at, and you may have to jump into those emotional heartstrings to get them to see, hey, you were in contradictory, hey, you have problems, hey, you were wrong, hey, you are immoral. So understanding this apathetic approach is one of the best ways, which is going to lead me to my question, because this is a question that will tap into people's heartstrings. So here is my question. Does someone else have the moral right to steal from you to feed their starving kids? That's my question. Because that's a question right there that most people would identify with and say yes. Yes, because they would see themselves as the person who has starving kids who would do anything for them, and they would go and steal from someone else to feed their starving kids. But I reverse it and put it on them. You are the one who doesn't have the starving kids. You are the one who is having your property stolen. So does someone else have the moral right to steal from you to feed their starving kids? Of course the answer is no. Now mind you, I can have compassion with, because of course, we should try to preserve life, I don't want any kid to be starving, but we can't justify, wrong behavior, because at the end of the day, you're still taking something that does not belong to you, food. You know, I would rather you just ask or explain, how the situation, than someone could say, hey, like if it was me, hey, just have the food. Hell, I would give up the food on my plate for someone else's kids. But most people in that situation wouldn't even think twice. And they would just say, hell, I would steal for someone else to feed my starving kids, because people do that daily. Everybody in government does it. Everybody who works for government, everyone who receives a paycheck from government does it daily, every day. So learning how
So
to
the
tap.
kids aren't starving them.
Well, yeah. Because people who get checks from the government, their checks ain't never late. So, but but tapping into the emotional heartstrings is a good way, because you have to kind of have a feel from where this person is at, not just consciously, but hell, emotionally. And if you know this person has kids, then you have to relate it in a way that they can understand it. If you know this person, likes sports, you have to relate things in a way that how that they can understand it. If you know this person likes any form of hell, whatever, if you can relate this information in a way that they can understand it based on what their preferences are, then it'll make planting these seeds a whole lot more easier. And that is a very heartfelt question, because a lot of people haven't really thought of that question. And a lot of people will do anything for their kids at the expense of others, if need be. And that's the problem with people. So one of my second question is, do you really love your kids? If you are Do you really love your kids, friends, or family if you are condoning theft on them, if you are enslaving them, if you are stealing from them? Now, mind you, that's not really in the apathetic sense, but how you can kind of mix and match how your questions when you are creating these things. So, how do you really love someone if you were enslaving them, if you are putting them in a position of duress, of chaos? I mean, like, can you really love someone if you were enslaving them? You can't, so these are some of the questions that, could possibly help, in trying to get this information out, because learning to tap into people's emotions do work, because we see the social engineers doing it daily. So like I've always said, we have to use these same techniques of mind control, not for our own egoic purposes, but for techniques of mind influence. So we can use these same techniques in a more positive way. So hell, that's what I wanted to get at.
Loved it. I love that 5 steps. And it was interesting that we were kind of heading down that trail, just kind of with our natural instinct of saying, yeah, first we have to define things. And looking back at my chat with the AI, that's kind of what I was doing. I was saying, okay, let's define, what does anarchy mean? And then I was like, okay, now that we've defined it, doesn't that mean such and such? And then it would give its answer. And I would say, well, given that you gave that answer, this is what you're saying, right? Correct? And then it really doesn't like agreeing, because what I was doing was comparing a government to an anarchist and saying which one's more dangerous, and it's saying, well, I can't really compare the two, they're two different things. I'm like, well, which has done more damage historically speaking, and as you're taking its own words and saying, well, you said that governments are much more dangerous than anarchists, so why do we keep using them if they're killing hundreds of people? Here's one question I asked, and I think this is a good for, I've met people that are super left brain. They carry around a lot of facts in their head and they like read a lot, but they have a lot of trouble when the discussion goes over to spirituality or morality. They want to get really left brained about it. And I asked this question, and you could ask somebody, hey, look this up on your computer. Can you give us some examples of governments doing immoral acts against large numbers of humans? Can it? Oh yeah, it can. It came up with 5 real quick. It came up with the Holocaust. It came up with the Rwandan genocide, the Armenian genocide, the Trail of Tears, the Cultural Revolution under Mao, 1.5 million people. It says these are just a few examples of governments committing immoral acts against large numbers of humans throughout history. And I said, since governments have repeatedly committed horrific acts that are immoral, why would we continue to trust them? Won't they just continue to make the same similar actions in the future? And they're all long. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm just kind of giving you some of the ideas that we can keep prompting and asking people, like, hey, you said this, so doesn't that mean this? If governments killed a lot of people in the past, what would prevent them from doing that in the future? Right. Your hopes and dreams, where's the evidence that would ever get any better, or that anarchists would become more dangerous than they have been in the past, which hasn't been very dangerous. Why would they get more dangerous in the future without governments, who are the most dangerous thing in all of history?
Yeah. They're thinking about that Mad Max scenario like we mentioned last time, right?
Right. It's imagination, and a lot of this comes from Hollywood, the thoughts that are in people's heads. But if you say that to someone, they're going to take that as offensive, and they're going to be like, I'm not brainwashed. I'm too smart to be brainwashed. So that's why we got to find our way to work through more creative questioning. So I'll pass it to Jim. You got any comments or more ideas, stuff there, Jim? What's going through your head?
Sure. Yeah. I'm really fascinated by that AI thing. I didn't even know that you could do that. And like I know this whole thing about the Socratic method and using it, it's trying to get people to think, right? And that's what like the government doesn't want people to do. They don't want us to think, And that's an interesting thing. Like we've been programmed to like not to think. But with this AI, they're who's programming, like where did the AI get the information to, answer? It was programmed by humans, obviously, but
Right.
but I find that so interesting that you were able to like take it through the Socratic process and method, and it processes stuff much faster than people will. And it gets them to answer the questions. Like that's really fascinating. Like how you were able to get those. You said it doesn't like what, but it has to give the answers. You can't run or whatever, right?
It seems like it's
That's
interesting.
fascinating.
You can kind of cage it in, and it starts. Well, you got to realize too, like, there's different AI bots out there, right? And the one I'm using is just one I downloaded from an application. It might not be smart as another one, but I think the idea is they gather information from all over the net, wherever they could find it. But that being said, I strongly suspect that this one I'm working with here, it has some programming to prevent it from saying just about anything, because it's very careful on some of these subjects. It's kind of saying, well, I'm just an AI bot. I can't pretend to know that much about morals, but I can provide opinions as I'm programmed to remain neutral. Here's the one where I said, is anarchy a bad thing? And it says, as an AI language model, I cannot provide opinions as I am programmed to remain neutral. However, anarchy is often viewed as a negative concept by many people because it's associated with chaos, violence, and lawlessness. without a centralized government or authority to enforce laws and maintain order, some people fear that society would devolve into a state of constant conflict and disorder. However, proponents of anarchy argue that true anarchy is not a state of chaos, but rather a society based on voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, which could lead to greater freedom, equality, and justice. Thank you, AI bot. Thank you very much.
That's weird.
Fucker, gotcha.
So
funny how
it's
the AI.
programmed just the same
Yep.
as people,
Yep.
right?
I was
To
about to say
think
the
what
same thing,
anarchy
Jim.
is. They tell it, yeah. I just like
He asked the
I'll
right
add another
questions, man.
question. I'll add another question that I've asked people is like, do you own your body? Or do you own your body, or do you think that's your opinion? And most people right away are like, of course, what the fuck you talking about? I own my body, like this, and then I say, well, if you didn't pay your taxes, or would you be taken, imprisoned for that? And I'm kind of not explaining it well, but I know everyone can get that. If you get pulled over by a policeman and you didn't do anything wrong, and maybe you weren't wearing your seatbelt, and you were like, well, listen, I got to get home to my kids, and I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not harming anyone. I'm just gonna go. I got to go home. I got to get home. And then you drive away. What's gonna happen is the cop's gonna come and grab you and maybe hurt, put you in handcuffs and put you in prison. Like, and so do you own your body? Like, just more like that's the kind of questions you ask people to get them to understand that you really don't own your body. You think you do, but another good one is about owning your body. When you go back to when there was the slaves in America, and you ask, do you think that they had the right to defend themselves if a slave escaped from the plantation and they got caught? Do you think they had the right to like kill the person who was trying to catch them? That's a deep one, and it's a good one to think about. Like, and
Jim, just a correction. If you ran from the cops, there is no maybe. They are going to beat the fuck out of you. There is no maybe. Like, that's 100%. They're
it's
going to beat
true.
the fuck
I
out
mean,
of you. Yeah.
we just saw it. We just saw it with that poor guy in Memphis. They killed him like 3 houses away from his parents' house. Like, he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
There's proof right there. I mean,
Yeah, I recently
no
heard a
one can say
story
it's not true.
about a guy who was handcuffed with his hands behind his back and his feet were cuffed together, and they had him in some sort of mental institution, and somehow they killed this guy by dogpiling him. I think it was 6 or 7 cops plus 3 orderlies or something like that. He must not have been following their directions to a T, and they all jumped on him and he killed him. And you ask yourself, what kind of force is necessary with a guy who's shackled his hands and his feet, and he's locked in a room? Wow. That's talk about excessive force. How many anarchists have ever done that in history to a person? People that care about their philosophy wouldn't want to be seen doing something that stupid, and it's embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing what all these examples we have, a whole history of the world of examples of authority doing the most heinous things that you can imagine. That's a pretty good track record, and that's a pretty good thing to ask people about. Have you ever heard about this? Have you ever heard about that? Yeah. Have you ever heard about that? Don't these things start to indicate a pattern?
You would think. And that's the whole beauty, of this, of asking questions. Because like I said 2 weeks ago, once you ask that question, normally the conscious mind, like wants to try to figure out how to answer. It's just like when you watch that thumbnail, video, and it has that question, forgetting the title, like most people gonna click on it because it sparks that curiosity. It sparks that creativity. Hell, that's the conscious mind. It's like I got to figure this out. So hell, that's the whole beauty of asking these questions. You can get some form reference. You can get some form of report. And like Derek said earlier, like in doing the Socratic method, you cannot bring your emotions in, because once you bring the emotion in, you will just stay in a form of perception or subjectivity. To truly understand things from an objective standpoint, you got to take the step back and get that different vantage points, get that different angle, so you can see things more clearly. You got to get that different scope. So that's the whole beauty of this. Once you bring your emotions in, then things won't go well. So you do have to kind of play the devil's advocate, that devil's advocate too, and then you kind of have to play stupid, as if like, oh, what would happen, like if this, how scenario, happened according to, how your answer, so, hell, you do have to kind of play dumb sometimes, but that's the whole point, because you may know this stuff, but you are trying to, spark or, teach someone else that, even though they may not know it, kind of like how Jerry was saying, with the whole method, learning. So yeah, not letting your emotions get involved, staying, level minded, clear headed. That's the best approach, because then you can stay logical and continuously create more conversation, because once you bring those emotions, you're going to shut down, and then the other person's going to shut down. But if you stay calm centered, then that's when you have that good, have report to go with that back and forth, dialogue, not necessarily like a form of debate, but more like a form of curiousness, and just spreading, how knowledge and just asking questions. It's like, if you've seen a good man on the street video, like there's a lot of people who do a lot of good man on the street videos, and you can tell, sometimes, that freaking have to play dumb, but they are using that Socratic method to ask questions, and based on what people say, that's going to lead to more question, and it can be an infinite, dialogue, kind of like with Chris and the AI. And Chris, I think that is a good way, to explain what the Socratic method was, because I'm sure you can talk with the AI for hours upon hours upon hours, and it would never end.
Oh man, forget about it.
Yeah.
I just gotta say one thing real quick with this whole trickster and the mixture thing, and like, think of like any kind of court gesture back in the medieval times, right? They knew very well both sides of the same fucking coin of many things going on, and yes, there was controlled opposition and all that stuff, but just like looking at as the archetypal like energy or persona, if you will, of like having a bit of that in your like an ace up your sleeve in a sense, or just like having that with you. And I'm not going to disagree with you, Brandon, but the whole spectrum of emotions in the moment, there's going to be something like energy in motion, emotion, right? But like, as far as like getting your emotions invested in that, interaction, that's what you're talking about. You know what I mean? But like, hey, like, I'm sharing emotion right now, like the enthusiasm or whatever, like just being animated and all that stuff. That's something. That's how we wield our fucking magic sometimes. And we can have that law of attraction and the law of persuasion mixed up in there to make things more appealing to other people, and have them feel more invited to engage in that type of thing. And so yeah, it's interesting just like thinking about any kind of like court gesture, and like looking at the crowd and like, hey son, like you in the front row, like what do you think about your new king and what he's gonna do to the land? And he wants to put this new uh brand new you know mono agricultural thing, and you're gonna have extra space, and there's gonna be more jobs for more people, but there's gonna be a little extra tax on all that stuff. So there's all these things that you can read between the lines and see how people work that stuff. But as far as like how that applies to what we're getting at, and it's not about dangling carrots for anyone, and it's not about being that manipulative, but like having them something, like always having something for them to like glean upon, or being like entertaining to a degree, or something that could even light up their eyes, or just not shut down their heart, but open it, you know? Because we see so many times of even like bullshit ass fucking like Facebook exchanges, which is, you know, limited language between two people to begin with, but you know, like people just shut off after the first, you know, little like Discord type of thing, and it's like, where do we go from there? Again, you know, like we're trying to dissolve these divides, and sometimes like you try to bring certain things up, and it creates more division just because we had a wrong approach sometimes, or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Derek, you know, for me, it's coming into the word I came up with offended. And I thought a lot about this on a recent hiking trip. And I was talking with Leslie about it and my friend Jason, and we were talking about, you know, whenever you sense yourself being offended, you notice your emotions, you can feel it in your body. Another, you know, my yoga teacher points that out. When you feel that emotion coming through you, you're like, what is it that's offending me? Why am I getting so easy out of balance? There's always something there for us to learn about ourselves whenever we start feeling that offended feeling. And a lot of people don't recognize that truth. When they feel that offended thing, they blame it on you. It's your fault I feel offended. And that's silly, but that's the truth. The state most your average person might be in. And so that's really tricky to deal with. And so, like you're saying, we kind of have to be cautious with that factor. Most people don't have the emotional intelligence to recognize that when you're feeling offended, it's because there's something in you that needs work. And that's why you're offended, you know? But the other thing I wanted to point out is I was thinking a lot about what Jerry was saying about truth and asking questions about where people are at with truth. Because one thing I've come to recognize is you can get into some really long conversations and spend 3 hours with somebody who ultimately does not give a crap about learning anything from this conversation. And generally, those people are moral relativists. And if a person truly deep down thinks that there is no such thing as truth, you're wasting your time talking to them and asking them questions. Personally, I think a person has to have some level of recognition that there is a such thing as truth. Because if they're not willing to do that, you're kind of wasting your time with all these other questions. And so that is a good one up front to try to find out from someone, like, do they actually believe? And one way to do that is ask them, what's the difference between truth, or what's the difference between ethics and morality? You know, and then you can kind of talk about what is the difference, and then what is right. Not necessarily what is a right, but what is right. What makes something wrong? Why are things wrong? You know, if there's not a such thing as truth, talk about apophatic, I'm sorry. If there is no such thing as truth, then why do we have that word? What does that word describe? Because if there's no such thing as truth, that means everything is arbitrary and there's no solidness to anything. So how could we have physics or science? How could we have electronics that work? How could we predictably imagine where a plane's going to land if there was no truth? Everything was arbitrary. You know, the physics could change between here and Chicago, you know? So, you know, if we can work with someone on asking questions and trying to find out if they really care about the fact that there is a such thing as truth. And by the way, that's what objective means, that it's the same from any angle. Subjective means it's how I feel or how I see it from my body and my lens. So I'll hand it off. Anybody else got something?
Yeah.
Just real quick,
uh,
Brendan, I just want to say, like, the whole offended thing, like, for me, it's all about like staying centered in between the pillars of enlightenment. Like I said, like, if you're standing on solid fucking ground and solid like axioms of truth, how the fuck can you not be offended, or just, you know, staying within like core essence of who the fuck, you know, the I am, and all that gnosis of self, you know? So that's what I, you know, try to say. I've said that in other segments and videos and stuff, but yeah, I love that pun. Yeah, the offended. Yeah, sorry, Brandon, go.
yeah. Just to clarify something, how that I said with the how emotional thing, and the reason why I said that is because if you're engaged in conversation, and you know, like someone is vibing with you, usually most of the time they're going to mimic your behavior. Like that's one thing that's taught in NLP and in psychology. So, like, so when I'm talking about don't bring your emotions involved. I'm not talking about like don't be expressive with your body language. No, no, no. I'm talking about don't be so reactive to a answer, how that someone says, to where it gets you to lose sight of what the true purpose is. Because the whole being are bringing emotions within your body. That's going to help bring your point a hell across, and that's actually needed. So that's one of the tools to where if someone is going to use the Socratic methods of NLP also need to be understood too, because it can help you gain much more of a report and to better target, hell, your audience or whoever it is. So, hell, that's what I mean by don't bring your hell emotions involved. Hell, don't be so quick to just react to what somebody says, because if it's really about, planting seeds and trying to get this information across, then you have to be willing to, just kind of sit back and just open up your ears and just kind of, nod your head, and just use all of that stuff, in the NLP or stuff that you learned in psychology to get a better understanding. Then you use that as information. So once you build up your next question, or, hell, it'll create more report, or it'll create more, conversation, because that's information, hell, that you're taking in.
Nice. Yeah, I'll share like when I've dabbled with this Socratic method, I've ran into a problem where I know there's a psychology behind it, where people are going to go into they want to dodge the question, like they go into fight or flight, or they just want to like run away from it. So then I know that's happening. Like they'll do anything to like not answer the question or start saying yeah, but, and then instead of me trying to reel them back in to answer the question, I get like emotional. And I start telling them, yeah, I know what's happening. Like you're in cognitive dissonance and you don't want to, you're just doing anything you can to not answer the question. So that's like my bad. Like I haven't gotten that far where I can just like reel them back in. I'm just trying to show them like what's going on in their head, which is not working either. But
We've all done that before
yeah.
too, Yeah, because you don't want to start attacking this person, because, like, what's this person going to do? They're going to shut down, how they're going to leave, conversation. And then have the next person who tries to bring this information up toward them, they're going to relate it back to, how them shutting down, and then it's just going to be shut off. So, you do need to have a level of self-control. How when doing this, you do need to have a level of, of done some shadow work, to a degree, because, hell, when talking to people and we talking about these subjects, I mean, hell, let's be honest, you can bring up some emotional things, and you don't know how someone is going to react. So you have to be willing to, to take that into consideration too, just jumping into this, blind and just thinking, oh, everything's going to be okay. It may not, because you may ask some kind of heartfelt question that may bring up some form of, trauma in this person's life. It's like the question that I asked. Maybe someone had kids who starved to death. He'll know someone's kids who starved to death, so they're going to have some emotional outbursts. So you never really know. So you do need to have a level of self control.
I think it's important to practice this because if we, are rusty, we're more likely to get off-ended. So, great points, everyone.
I'm going to type your question and see what the AI said. If someone had starving kids, would it be moral for them to steal food? Right? Is that a good way to say it? I know the way you asked it was better when you're asking a person, but I'm going to see what this bot says.
Yeah. Yes. See what the AI bot says.
I wrote, if someone had starving kids, would it be moral for them to steal food? As an AI language model, I don't hold personal beliefs or opinions. It says that to almost everything I ask it. But generally speaking, the question of whether it is moral to steal food to feed starving children is a complex ethical issue that depends on various factors, including cultural, legal, and moral norms. In some cases, stealing food may seem as necessary and justifiable action to prevent harm to innocent people, particularly if other options are not available. However, stealing is generally considered to be unethical and illegal, and it can have negative consequences for both the thief and the victims of the theft. It is important to consider all options and seek help from appropriate sources, such as food banks or charities, before resorting to stealing. What a geek. It always hedges its bets, you know, it can't just
it contradicts itself.
It's like, well, it is, but it isn't.
Yeah. Can only go so far based off programming.
You know, and it's pretty similar answers I get from people, honestly, what this AI is giving.
Right.
Me.
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting. And so I mean, I recommend everybody have these conversations in your own head when you're driving, when you're laying in bed, before you go to sleep. What are people going to say? You know what people you know are going to say. You know what they're going to say. You can discuss a lot of it out in your own mind because you know what people are going to say. And if you haven't had those conversations and you don't know what people are going to say, ask them, and you'll find out what they're going to say. And it'll blow your mind when you really think about it, because most of the time what people say is absolutely ridiculous. Because when you go out in public and you ask people, where does a right come from? They think a right comes from the government or a piece of paper. Come on.
Or like the moral norm.
Right.
You catch that?
The moral norms.
They said something like that. The moral norm,
Yeah.
which is another euphemism for
and,
like a subjective morality.
And I even asked it like 3 questions ago, just because something's normalized or a lot of people think it, does that make it true? And it had to admit, no, truth is not defined by how many people think it. Yeah, see? What are you talking about then?
Moral norms is the cultural relativism we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. So. It's talking about cultural relativism.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is moral relativism with a funny name.
Yeah, you know, but
all right, well, let's close this up. Any last thoughts? Let's go around. Anybody want to say anything, and then we'll move on.
Chris, don't forget to show some love to the funnel conference that's coming up soon. You know, before we end this, so, you know, we got to show you some love, Will Keller, and everyone, you know, that's helped out. So you know, it's really all about, you know, doing the shadow work and trying to spread this information, man. Because that's really what we are here to do, is to learn, grow, and to help others learn and grow, and planting these seeds, you know, taking in this information, trying to spread this knowledge of how natural law, objective morality, shadow work, how occultism, you know, how that's really what we are trying to do. And that's what the whole point of the show is, you know, the whole Socratic method. We are trying to give different ways that people can try to, you know, plant these seeds, because it is not an easy thing in today's world, you know. So just keep on, you know, trying to spread this good message. And, you know, I'm gonna pass it on to whoever want to take it up next.
I'll go real quick. So the things that came up too was thinking, and I think there's a distinction between reaction and passion. So I get, you know, I ask myself, am I being reactive or am I passionate? Like, I'm constantly asking questions to myself, and that maybe be considered a shadow work. So it can be done anywhere, I guess. But you know, before I take a step that could affect others, then I ask myself, is this the right step? And so I've asked someone, I said, hey, talk about natural law. And he said, oh, well, I think I said, like, if someone murders someone, like, would you have the right, or if someone tried to murder you, like, would you have the right to defend yourself? And, like, if you had to kill him to defend yourself? His response was like, no, because what if they change in the future? And, like, situations like that you'll encounter by having these conversations, which is truly beneficial, because you'll learn something and you will see where their state of mind is, and then kind of gauge, like, whether, you know, you can confide in this person or not. But Yeah, another thing, what I was saying at the beginning was thinking is what came to mind because, like, let's say the schooling system, right? They're like with history, they're saying World War II happened this way. Study it, take a test, see how smart you are. All right, here's a degree. But did the student like they're gonna live their life with that answer essentially? But they like revised it? Have they gone through the steps? Like you have to go through the steps. You have to ask the questions, and that's where true learning is. I'll pass it to Derek.
Yeah, and we could learn a lot just by asking a question, a simple three-letter word that no one asked all night. And of course, we got more complex things than that, but why?
Mm.
But but yeah, it's like we could compare and whatever, but in ways that we can ask questions like, "Hey, how do you spend your free time?" Because like I'm over here, like all my free time is spent on researching, putting out the message of this and that, trying to inspire and encourage other folks for through different mediums of expression. Like, what's good with you, man? Like, and like be that mirror in a sense. Like, that's that neutral point, like Brandon was talking about, and I totally understood where you were getting at with that from the get, but I just wanted to throw a little aside to that, but like being able to like not let the other person, that's responsibility, right? So yeah, there's so many ways we can train and like have target practice or whatever, and not in a bad way target practice, but yeah, for me and Brandon, like our jobs, like we're like out in the public talking to like hundreds of people all the time, like, and we gotta alchemize a bunch of shit even on the fly, like any given time type of thing. So you see people mashing their teeth over whatever, and yeah, like you've done the shadow work. You can see the projections and you get an insight of where those are coming from, and not let it affect you like on that personal level because it's not about us. It's something projected from them to a degree, and we could take that opportunity to like heal anything to any fucking sliver of a percentage of whatever, right? So yeah. Anyways, that's my little bit on that, but yeah, Jimmy, what's cracking?
Thank you guys. I always appreciate, that we can do these talks and share this, knowledge and that. I just like to encourage people to like look into the Socratic method and, like really see what it's about. And I mean, I can leave like go back to like that one question, do you own your own body? And think about it, and think of what are the consequences of that if you don't own your body, right? And thinking, I think thinking is huge. Like we've been programmed to believe in so much stuff. So we got to really think about moral relativism and reality of like what's truthfully happening and sit with that and think about it. So that's it. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks, Jerry and Brandon and Derek and Rick. You're out there and listening land too. Appreciate you a lot, brother. And you know, the last thing that was coming to my head as you guys were all kind of finishing up there is that that question why, like Derek said, you can always ask more questions. There's always more questions to get to the root of things. And one thing I like to do in terms of philosophy is ask yourself, kind of like how little kids do, why is that, why is that, or but kind of in the frame of like, where does that come from? You know, like take something like the Constitution. Where does that come? Where did it come from? Well, it came from these guys. Came from their minds. Well, where did they get those ideas? Where do those ideas come from? If you do that on anything, it's amazing. You keep pushing your brain, and you try to keep getting to the point where you get down to principles. And I just think it's a fun exercise. And I think, like Derek said, this whole process is an exercise of expanding our minds and teaching other people to do that kind of workout too. More people get going on that, we'll all be in better fitness, and we'll start to see that more morality equals more freedom in the world when people are able to stretch their minds into a little bit more of an open-minded shape that can ask the hard questions and not get overwhelmed by the emotions that come up. So thanks so much for all your wisdom, guys. And we'll get back at it as soon as possible.
Yeah, you gonna talk about funnel real quick? There we
Let's
go.
do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
June 24th and 25th, we're going to do the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference. I urge folks to go to freedomundernaturallaw.com and you can register there. We got a lot of great speakers in the lineup this year, and that is all posted now on the website, freedomundernaturallaw.com. And it's going to be a great event. It's just one speaker after another with some cool bits in between. We got music and cool visuals, and a lot of people just for free putting their heart and their passion into these presentations and this music they're going to share with you and this art. You know, we got people contributing art, we got people contributing music, and it's going to be a fantastic event. And I urge you to set that weekend aside. It'll be 2 full days of awesome material and content. Thanks for reminding me to share that. Appreciate
And
it, Brendan.
come hang out in the chat. You know, the first funnel, hell, I was in the chat. Second funnel, it was even bigger. We had a good time. You know, so come say hey. You know, a lot of people from the network would be on there. You know, so come, hell, come spark some conversation.
Absolutely, that's how it's done, folks. Networking and sharing and contributing and encouraging and motivating other people to do the same. So that's what we're doing. Go Warriors.
Buddy.
All right, guys. Much love.
Yeah, peace. Thank you.
I got the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, night, your word, learned your lesson. I got the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, night, your word, learned your lesson. I got the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, night, your word, learned your lesson.
Erasing the mark of the beast technology, but implanting the seed of spiritual immortality and precision.
Not sorry that I'm getting my priorities straight. I've already made too many mistakes not to be taken for granted. There's growth where a seed is planted. It's time to take advantage. Don't hold your breath. The time is now, cause there might not be too much left. Know what I mean?
Trying to go down the list of all the other speakers just real quick, just so you all get an idea. Like, I've done podcasts and interviews and roundtable discussions with the majority of these people, you know. So who do we got? Well, first of all, there's first and foremost Brandon Martin, who's the founder of Seed, and this is the 4th installment of these conferences. And it's not only that, but you know, he's got a lot of works in the background, and he's trying to really create a pretty big foundation, like a real academy type of thing, I believe. And yeah, there's a lot of big things on the horizon, where he's coming from and what he's trying to do. And yeah, he's even got some books in the work. And yeah, on the website you can go through all the presenters, and they got their information and all that. So, you know, with that said, I'm going to go down the list. James Cordner from the good old Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. You can catch him live every Saturday, pretty much. I think I want to say it's 6 p.m. Eastern time? No. Whatever. Yeah, just check it out, his website. Yeah, all the links are on that Seed conference. And yeah, been in contact with James quite a bit, and had a couple podcasts, and we'll probably get one in again in the near future. And then next up, Brandon Spencer. What can I say? I caught him out in Las Vegas on the way driving to the Bay. Chilled with him for a few days. You can catch a couple of videos that we put out in regards to that. Really interesting, and got a lot of love and respect for this brother. And he's the one that actually put this video together. And like I said, he'll be presenting the goods this weekend. And again, yeah, part of the One Great Work Warriors. He's probably the best technician out of the crew, which is, great for him to, great for us to learn from him, rather. So, ooh la 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 la, putain, my English is not that great. Being out in France, it's not helping with the excuse me. Nate Cap, other main vein of the Truth Academy, Seed Truth Academy, and as well as the Cubbyhole. Had a wonderful chat with him, as with Brandon, Leslie, and I. We have our Dissolving the Divide, and we've had a lot of these cats that are in the conference on our show. And it ain't no fucking echo chamber either. That's the thing. People look at folks in a certain network, or kind of in certain Facebook groups even, or whatever, blah blah blah. And just to make things easy for a simple-minded person, is to just compartmentalize something like that and just call it whatever they perceive it to be, in a sense. Whatever. Yeah, so Nick Cap's great. Working that light side of Freemasonry. Something a lot of people watching too much conspiracy porn, like, oh, Freemasons, it's all evil. It's like, look into the whole fucking history of it. There's like so many books about it, and like if you haven't even read into one of them, what the fuck are you talking about? Yes, a lot of these ancient mystery schools have been co-opted, and maybe they weren't the bee's knees to begin with or whatever, but there's so many nuggets of truth and ways to be a master builder of your own life, your inner temple. And, yes, masonry is just a common term for people that be laying bricks and architecture, making buildings, things that we fucking need in society, so, yeah. Mais oui, les gars, les francs-maçons, ils sont où? Ah là là, ils sont partout, mon Dieu, oh là là. Mec. Mec means dude in French. It's one of my favorite words. Not really, it's just like funny for me. So, yeah, Douglas Martin, related to Brandon. I want to say he's his uncle, whatever, but yeah, another great researcher. All these cats in the cubbyhole and Seed, they're well read in regards to symbolism and esoteric information, going through a lot of teachings from these mystery schools, not just Freemasonry. There's like Thelma and Rosicrucianism, things of that nature, which have their light and dark sides. People gotta understand all these secret societies. Sometimes they kept secrets hidden from the public or whatever, because they could have been killed for it and that kind of shit. Yeah, there's like, think of since medieval times or antiquity, like how many witch hunts there's been. Not just in regards to women, but all these other people that didn't want to comply and get assimilated into like the fucking bullshit religious takeovers of like Europe and other places, Anyways. So yeah, Douglas Martin brings the knowledge to the table every fucking time. A lot of stuff you can learn from him. You can find him out in the Cubbyhole and the Seed. Mark Devlin, great man, tried to reaching out to him, and we had like delayed things, and he actually responded. And yeah, great researcher. He's an author of several books titled Musical Truth, where he talks about a lot of things behind the scenes, satanically speaking, in the music industry. That's why I don't, like, intuitively, like when I was in high school, I kind of gave up on commercial music and MTV and bullshit like that, because it was just, yeah, but even back then it was whack to me, and I got keyed into some really cool conscious hip hop and that kind of stuff, which blew all that other shit out the fucking my frame of focus. And it was like, wow, this is so much better. What a breath of fresh air for the ears, especially, and all that. So yeah, there's reasons why, you know, music is dumbed the fuck down the way it is, and like you look at MTV now, it's like you're watching soft porn or whatever the fuck. Whatever. Anyways, it's like a freak show out there with people with 1,000 tattoos on their face now, and what, I don't get it. Whatever. To each their own, that's their free will, but at the same time, a lot of these folks are just mind control victims. You know, they're not in the Illuminati. No, they're getting pimped out by them, pretty much. If you will. But anyways, the Illuminati, you know, like dim, because their light is fucking overshadowed by, you know, that dark bullshit that's not aligned to natural law. And what the fuck they're trying to do is invert and pervert that shit. And we're not fucking having that shit. Anyways. Mark Devlin is great. He has quite a few presentations. He's well seasoned, you know, as far as like being a truth speaker as well. So, great DJ as well. Better than me. And then Logan Hart is going to bring some fire to the table, as he always does, repping that Wizard Factory. And, you know, he's got his Heartfire Productions, and he's trying to be a way shower and mentor as well. He has certain programs you can sign up for as well. And he can also teach you the ropes on certain technologies and content creation and that kind of thing. He also makes music. He's one mother trucker. Part of like what is does for, you know, financial income on the side. Next is my lovely friend and co-host of Dissolving the Divide, Leslie Powers, who let me stay at her place. I slept on her couch one night in Reading, hanging out with them. Her and Chris, they've been partners for, I want to say 2 years or so now. And yeah, it's been great hanging out with both of them. And what Leslie Powers brings to the table is some pretty empowering feminine perspective this time around with her presentation. And yeah, healing from trauma, breaking negative stereotypes or generational traumas and that kind of stuff. And she ain't no fucking like weird feminist either, you know, and I ain't no fake ass like white knight goddess, you know, worshipping fucking whatever the fuck. That ain't my steez at all, and that's not where I'm coming from. I got so much respect for the divine feminine, and but yeah, when that essence is in my presence, yeah, I definitely give praise. You know? So she really loves doing these presentations, and I know she takes it really seriously and devotes a lot of time, energy, and focus to these things. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to see her in her element doing these things. And her and I will be back on track with Dissolving the Divide in October. Yeah, once this is done, we're going to be, you know, hitting the ground running for the most part. So yeah. And next, Will Keller, quite the truth teller. And yeah, he brings a lot of great energy, knowledge, and experience of what he's been as, especially as a conscious freedom fighter and parent, Yeah, raising them seeds properly, you know. And yeah, he's part of the Freedom Under Natural Law group, that funnel icon you see, where we had the Trivium conference, which is why I've been so like in the mood to kind of promote these things, because I was part of this last really great event, which had a lot of familiar faces that are in this one, but it's just under a different title, theme, if you will, was a Trivium, right? Get that knowledge, understanding, and turn that stuff into proper fucking wisdom, which is right action, right speech. So, yeah, we had a chat with him a couple times in a couple videos, roundtables and such. Yeah, great cat. Out in the Bay Area too. And next we got the homie Chris, and I was chilling in his studio. It's pretty groovy, yo. Where we try to end evil. Not just in the studio, but just on a daily fucking basis, right? You know, and that involves your own shadow work and inner work, right? And yeah, great man trying to do great things and keep building off of what we got going on. I've been in contact with him for quite a while. We've put a couple videos together. He's the head honcho of the Great Work Warriors, and he's got his live stream rather on his End Evil podcast every Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And he's rebroadcasting every one of our Great Work Warrior videos, and then usually he's doing like a follow-up live session where people can call in, not just comment in, but you know, actually call in and chat. It's like a, you know, a live roundtable, which is really cool. He's got an interesting new presentation coming up where he's mixing a little bit of his own music in there, so looking forward to that. Him and I have, you know, had some cool exchanges and inspirations and all that good jazz. Dorian Greens, another member of the One Great Work Network, someone who I had the pleasure of doing a really cool interview with in French, because she's actually from a city or a town that's close to Marseille, where I used to live, and I'm actually living in La Ciotat, which is pretty close to Marseille anyways. And just last month I got to hang out with her for a little bit in between my little work shifts, and we were swimming together in the Mediterranean Sea with her stepbrother, and even her mom came out, and yeah, it's just really, really great to hang out with people in real life, you know. And she brings a lot of interesting experience to the table, and you know, her skill set as an artist and dancer, and she makes holistic products at certain local, what do we call it, markets, farmers market type of things, out in Taiwan. Yeah, but she's been visiting a family out in France for about a month, so I had the honor and luck to meet up with her, and that was really cool. She put out a really cool dance presentation with some abstract action going on in there at the previous funnel conference, Freedom Under Natural Law. And highly recommend that, as well as her other dance video projects. It's quite interesting, and just like that fluidity of movement, and also incorporating things like natural law, and yeah, you gotta see it to see what I'm saying. I'm sure you saw some of the elements if you actually caught even just the introduction of the video that her and I did. It was pretty cool. Mixed in some French hip hop snippets. I'm sure y'all understood every word of that. But yeah, anyways. All right, Brian Easterday. Really interesting cat. Friend, someone I've been in contact with recently. He recently just became an author of his own book, as well as being part of the Anarchist Cookbook 2.0 that I was fortunately a part of, which was spearheaded by his wonderful partner, Brittany Ashby, actually. And Leslie and I are going to have them on Dissolving the Divide soon. Brian's put out some really interesting presentations in the past. He was on the Funnel Conference and I believe Seed Conference in the past. And I really like his astrological approach with his Eye of the Storm Astrology. That's his YouTube channel. And yeah, it's more from the Vedic side of things. And he has a really great presentation along the lines of, you know, how Vedic astrology and natural law are kind of go hand in hand. So yeah, really interesting piece of that puzzle in understanding and applying the sciences of life. And yeah, cultivating a greater gnosis of self, that high planetary magic. Patty Lager, great nutritionalist, health, I can't say doctor really or anything like that, but yeah, she specializes in holistic healthcare in a sense, and had the pleasure of having her on with Leslie on Dissolving the Divide as well. It was a really cool episode, just distinguishing what kind of healthcare you get from both sides, allopathic or homeopathic in a sense, and you know, how can we bridge those gaps of, you know, like not having such a mafia behind certain pharmakias, mes amis. Mark Passio, what can you say? What on earth is happening today? Of course, he's the founder and man behind that website, as well as the One Great Work Network. And he's put out some phenomenal, monumental presentations in the past, including, yeah, the Natural Law Seminar. And other ones that, you know, he brings that Leo fire and energy every single time. I know what that's like, because I was born on the 21st of August. Dylan McCormick. This is going to be interesting, because this is the only guy I do not know or like have like seen any of his works before, really. So yeah, I can't say for sure if he's even on the One Great Word Network. Not like that matters, because you know, these people were chosen for specific and important reasons. So it's going to be interesting what he's going to bring to the table. And yeah, I'm always open-minded to, you know, see and discover new truth speakers and all that good stuff. All right, so next, Seth Esposa from Black Earth Productions, who is the founder of Blue Flame Healing Arts and Occult Sciences, and he's offering several services and entry into his, it's kind of like a mystery school in a sense, where he will go one-on-one with you and have some really mind-blowing information being revealed through, you know, certain exchanges and like getting to know your, you know, soul code blueprint, if you will, and I've had meetings with him. I did the what do you call it, the full rights initiation package, and spoke with him for about 6 hours. Had my astrological chart read, based off the Western, not the Vedic, which is totally fine by me because it was mind-blowing and really reestablished, created, and also confirmed a lot about who I am, my trajectory in life, and part of my purpose here in this incarnation. So yeah, one of the most powerful things that I went through last year. I highly recommend inquiring with him about his services and checking out his videos on Black Earth Productions. Corey Andrula. I love saying it in French. I'm sorry, brother, if you feel like I'm butchering it, but yeah, one of the brothers. I've done several videos with you. I had the honor of being in his last. He put on a conference or a summit, online summit, with him and Aaron Butler last year. It had like 50 speakers talking about, ending fucking slavery forever. And he's put out like a revived type of newsletter called The Liberator, and you can actually, if you don't have certain outlets to submit a writing or something like that, or even some art or a meme or something like that, you can hit him up and ask if your works can be included in the next edition of his newsletter, which is all about those truthful things in life where we're trying to really establish proper sovereignty for all human beings and beyond that, right? So yeah, he's got his Nature is the Answer, NITA website. He's been on Dissolving the Divide as well, and I always like chatting with him. Next is Chris Nelson. This guy's done monumental work at evolveconsciousness.com, org. I swear I'm going to get that right sometime. And this guy's put out some of the best infographics you'll find in regards to like natural law, the trivium, things of that nature. And also had the pleasure and honor of speaking with him on Dissolving the Divide. You catching a certain common theme or pattern going on? So yeah, this guy is well researched, and I like the time and focus he puts and seriousness that he puts into his works and the subject at hand. Next to him, I feel like a goofball sometimes, just like talking about things, rhyming off the top or whatever, even laughing a little bit, but yeah, I got him to smile a little one time. That was cool. Anyways. Indica Martin. I bought her book for my new nephew. And that was another wonderful thing that happened last year. Full of a lot of ups and downs. And yeah, Indica Martin is the author of that children's book. And that inspires me to want to write a couple of children's books. I mean, how hard can it be, right? No, I'm just kidding. That's not to downplay her great work and what she's done. I have not interviewed her, but she's on our bucket list of people that we're looking to have on our Dissolving the Divide show. Yeah, she's got great energy, quite knowledgeable on things that are going to help raise these seeds properly and get that proper germination at the right ages and stages in those formative phases. So looking forward to that, because yeah, learning about how to be a better conscious parent is great, even if you're a single, fatherless. I mean, if you're not a parent yourself, it always helps to learn about these things to, you know, especially when you're going through the inner work and deprogramming from whatever, is how to be your own father, your own mother, you know. In a sense, maybe metaphorically speaking, or whatever. But, you know, take whatever I say as a grain of salt. If you don't like it, that's fine. So, yeah. That's the end of the video. Thanks for the credit, Brandon, on, you know, a little music mixed up in there.
I'm a warrior, writing war stories, documenting the truth of every sentence, give your strength a new dimension. Don't think about it now, give it time for apprehension. Your conscious mind is restless while the ancestors are resting.